Looking back now, I realized that the night I signed that contract was the night I signed away something much bigger than my time. It was the night I handed over the person I thought I was, and the cold, hard truth. At that moment, I thought I was just being professional. My name is Gabriel, I'm 28, and I work at a major consulting firm in downtown. The kind of place where you wear well-cut suits, say Synergy 3 times a day, and learn very early on that vulnerability has no place there. It was a masculine environment in the most traditional sense possible. Meeting rooms with glass doors, strong coffee, conversations about targets, numbers, results. A place where you put on a corporate mask along with your tie every morning. I was good at it. Very good, actually. I knew exactly how to behave, what to say, when to speak, when to stay silent. I was the efficient, competent Gabriel, always available. The guy who never said no, who accepted any request with a polite smile and impeccable posture. That's exactly why my boss called me in that Friday afternoon. He was in his corner office, high up with a city view. I remember the afternoon sun coming through the blinds, creating golden stripes across the dark wooden desk. He was standing, leaning against the window, with the sleeves of his white shirt rolled up to his elbows. He had that presence that some men just have. It wasn't just his upright posture or the way he commanded space. It was something subtler. The way he looked at you when you spoke, as if he was actually listening. The unshakable composure that radiated from him, even in the most intense board meetings. "Gabriel, sit," he said, pointing to the leather armchair in front of his desk. I sat down. He remained standing, which made me feel smaller, younger. He was about 42, hair starting to gray at the temples, broad shoulders that filled out his dress shirt well. He had a way of speaking that was paused, measured, as if every word was chosen carefully. "You know I trust your work," he began. It wasn't a question. "That's why I want to make you a different kind of proposal." He opened a drawer and pulled out a document, a few stapled pages. He placed it on the desk between us. "It's an extended availability contract," he explained, crossing his arms. "The company is in a critical phase. We need people who can be on call outside regular business hours, evenings, weekends if necessary." I picked up the document, fine print, formal clauses. Deep down, it was simple. I would be officially available for company demands outside the office upon his request. In exchange, a considerable monthly bonus. "Basically," he continued, "some weeknights would be mine. For urgent projects, meetings with international clients, preparing presentations, the kind of stuff that can't wait until Monday." The contract seemed harmless at first glance. Just a formalization of something many of us were already doing anyway. How many times had I stayed late resolving pending issues? How many weekends had I already sacrificed? "You'd have autonomy," he said. And for the first time I saw a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. "If at any point it doesn't work out, we stop. No pressure. But I need someone I can truly count on. And I thought of you." There was something in that "I thought of you" that made my stomach knot. It wasn't fear. It was something else. A strange mix of validation and apprehension. I should have felt proud, right? Being chosen by the director out of all the other analysts. But as I held that paper, there was a small, almost imperceptible discomfort in the back of my mind. Like a pebble in your shoe that you only notice after taking a few steps. "You can take it home, read it calmly," he offered. "But I need an answer by Monday." I didn't take it home. I signed it right there. He reached out his hand, and when I shook it, I felt the firmness of his fingers wrapping around mine. It was a long handshake, longer than normal. Long enough for me to notice the temperature of his skin, the slightly rough texture of his palm. "Great," he said, without letting go of my hand immediately. "So you're mine now, a few nights a week." The way he said that, "You're mine now," not "you're available," Or, we can count on you. You're mine. I laughed. It was a nervous, automatic laugh, the kind you give when you don't know exactly how to react. He let go of my hand and put the contract back in the drawer. First night is tomorrow. Saturday, he said, leaning back against the desk, closer to me now. I have an important presentation Monday morning. I need you to come to my place. We'll work on the slides, go over the numbers. Should take about 4 hours. His place, not the office, his home. No problem, I replied on autopilot. It was my standard answer for everything. No problem, sure. Consider it done. He wrote the address on a yellow post-it and handed it to me. When I took it, our fingers touched again, briefly. That shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. That night, at home, I stood looking at the sticky note on the fridge. An address in an upscale neighborhood. Apartment, not a house. 22nd floor. I told myself it was work. Just work. A chance to prove my worth, to grow in the company, to be closer to leadership. All the rational justifications we build when something doesn't fit quite right. But there was that unease. That feeling that I had just agreed to something that went beyond spreadsheets and presentations. On Saturday night, as I rode up the mirrored elevator of that building, I was still in professional mode. Light blue dress shirt, chinos, a brief with my laptop, the competent Gabriel off to do his job. The elevator ascended slowly, and with each floor that passed, I became more aware of my own reflection. Who was that man looking back at me? When the elevator doors opened on the 22nd floor, he was there. But it wasn't the suit and tie boss from the office. It was him in dark jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that emphasized his shoulders. Barefoot. Hair slightly tousled. And the most surprising thing, a smile. A genuine smile, not the corporate one he used in meetings. Come in, Gabriel. Make yourself at home. The apartment was exactly what I expected. Modern, minimalist, with an incredible view of the illuminated city. But it also had details I didn't expect. A bookshelf filled with real books, not just those management titles every executive keeps for show. Vinyl records neatly arranged next to a vintage turntable, a guitar leaning against the sofa. Want something to drink? Beer, wine, whiskey? Work, I thought. We came here to work. A beer, I heard my own voice reply. He went to the open-plan kitchen and returned with 2 cold long necks. He handed me one, and our fingers touched again in that brief contact that seemed to be becoming a pattern. We sat on the sofa, him at one end, me at the other. My laptop bag in the middle, a symbolic barrier. Before we start, he said, taking a sip of his beer, I want you to know something. He looked me straight in the eyes. It wasn't the look of a boss evaluating an employee. It was something else, something more horizontal, more human. There's no hierarchy here. Here, you can truly speak your mind. You can disagree. You can be yourself. Be myself. When was the last time someone had told me that? When was the last time I knew who myself was outside of that professional persona I wore like armor? Like this, he continued. If you think an idea is bad, say so. If you have a different suggestion, say so. And if at any point you want to stop and leave, you can say that too. That should have reassured me. It should have given me a sense of control. But what I felt was something more dangerous. I felt curiosity. We opened our laptops. We started working on the slides. And for the first 2 hours, that's exactly what it was. Work. Numbers, graphs, sales pitches. He was incredibly focused, asked precise questions, listened to my suggestions with genuine attention. But then it happened. It was almost 11 at night. We were leaning over his laptop screen, now sitting side by side, the briefcase long forgotten on the floor. I was explaining a financial projection, pointing to the numbers on the screen. Look here, I said, leaning closer. And it was at that moment I realized how close we were, shoulders almost touching. I could feel his warmth, the scent of his cologne mixed with something more personal, more intimate. Skin, perhaps, just skin. He turned his head towards me at the exact moment I turned mine. Our faces were inches apart. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't anything concrete. It was just a moment, a second, maybe two, in which the entire world narrowed down to that minimal space between us, where I could see the details of his eyes, the small lines of expression at the corners, the way the screen's light reflected in his dark irises. He didn't pull away. I didn't pull away. And then, slowly, he smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but one that said everything. I pulled away first. I returned my attention to the screen as if nothing had happened. My heart was racing. My hands trembled slightly over the keyboard. "I think we can stop for today," he said, his voice a tone lower. "We've made good progress." I gathered my things quickly. Too quickly. He walked me to the door, and when I said goodbye, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "Gabriel," he said, holding me there for a moment. "Thank you. For coming. For trusting." I just nodded and stepped into the elevator. On the way home, in the silent Uber cutting through the empty city, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. About those 2 seconds. What they meant. The contract said some nights were his, but what he was asking of me on those nights was starting to feel different from what was written on paper. And the scariest part? I wanted to find out what came next. The second night, he didn't ask me to work late. He asked me to stay. It seems like a small difference, right? But in that moment, sitting in his living room after everyone else had left, with the city lights twinkling below through the panoramic window, I felt the weight of that change. Working was one thing. Staying was something else entirely. "Do you have any plans tonight?" he asked, loosening his tie. The gesture was so simple, so ordinary, but there was something about it that made me swallow hard. "No," I replied. And it was true. My life had become that. Work, an empty house, Netflix until I fell asleep. Nothing to justify rushing off. "Great. Let's get dinner." It wasn't an invitation, it was a statement. And I found myself nodding before I even processed what was happening. We had dinner right there, in his living room. He had ordered Thai food curry so spicy it burned going down, and jasmine rice so fragrant it lingered on your fingers. We ate straight from the containers, sitting on the floor, because he said he was tired of formal dining. "Do you know why I created that clause in the contract?" he asked out of the blue, his wooden chopsticks still suspended in the air. "About the nights?" I shook my head. Honestly, I had tried not to think too much about it. Thinking meant questioning, and questioning meant admitting something strange was happening. He looked at the curry as if the answers were floating in the red sauce. "Because during the day, I'm the boss. I have to be rational, decisive, perfect. But at night..." He paused, searching for the right words. "At night, I just wanted to be human. No masks, no act." And in that moment, I saw, truly saw. Behind the imposing posture, the tailored suits, the firm commands, there was a man tired of playing a role. And why me? The question escaped before I could censor it. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Because you wear a mask too. I recognize it." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Because he was right. I spent my days being the perfect employee, agreeing, smiling, doing everything just right. But inside there were so many unanswered questions that I preferred not even to start unraveling. On the third night, he took me to his place. I should have said no. I should have set boundaries, maintained professional distance. But when he said, "I need to show you something," I simply got in the car. The view was absurd. Floor-to-ceiling glass, the entire city spread out like a carpet of lights. He poured wine a full-bodied red that stained the tongue purple, and we sat on the terrace, with the night wind rustling through our hair. I was married once. he said without warning. His words cut through the silence like a confession. 8 years. She was perfect, you know? Beautiful, intelligent, from the right background. Everything a man in my position was supposed to want. He paused, swirling the glass between his fingers. I waited. But I would wake up every morning with this suffocating feeling, as if there was a stone on my chest that got heavier every day. And it wasn't her fault. It was mine. Because I was living the life I was expected to live, not the life I wanted to live. What did you do? My voice came out softer than I intended. I fell in love. He looked directly at me for the first time since he started speaking. It was intense and desperate and completely unexpected. And when it ended, when I had to choose between continuing to pretend or blowing everything up, I chose to blow it up. And you regretted it? Every day. He gave a bitter laugh. And not a single day. It's paradoxical like that. I lost everything: marriage, the respect of some people, the illusion of having everything under control. But I gained something priceless. The possibility of being real. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. I just extended my hand and, without thinking much, touched his. Our fingers met there in the space between our chairs, and stayed that way. Just connected. It was the first time we had touched intentionally, and it was so simple, so small, just hands touching. But I felt an electric current run up my arm and spread through my chest. He didn't pull his hand away. Neither did I. We stayed there for hours, talking about things I had never told anyone. My parents, who never understood why I chose that career. The loneliness of living alone in a big city. The constant fear of not being enough. And he shared things too. The pressure of being seen as invincible. The weight of expectations. The exhaustion of always having to have the right answers. When I finally left, it was almost 3 a.m. He walked me to the door, and when we said goodbye, his fingers brushed my shoulder, just a touch, just a second, but I felt that gesture the entire way back home. On the 4th night, the boundary became even more tenuous. He had sent me a message during the day. Tonight is my night. At 8 p.m. It wasn't a request, it was a claim. And the scariest part? I was looking forward to it. I met him in the office after work, but this time there was something different in the atmosphere. A tension that wasn't there before. Or maybe it always was, but now it couldn't be ignored anymore. "Come here," he said, gesturing to the window. I went. We stood side by side, looking at the city below, our shoulders almost touching. Almost. "Have you ever wondered," he began, his voice low and careful, "who you would be if you didn't have to worry about what others think? If you could just be?" "Every day," I admitted. "And who would you be?" The question caught me off guard, because I had never verbalized it, not even to myself. "I don't know," I confessed. "I think I'm afraid to find out." He turned to face me, and suddenly the distance between us was ridiculously small. I could feel his warmth, the woody scent of his cologne mixed with something that was uniquely him. "I was afraid too," he said softly. "But you know what I discovered? That the fear of living a lie is worse than the fear of living the truth." My heart was beating so fast, I was sure he could hear it. My breathing was erratic. And when he raised his hand slowly, giving me time to back away if I wanted, and touched my face, I froze. Not from fear, from anticipation. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, so gentle it was almost painful. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he murmured. I should have said yes. I should have set boundaries. I should have remembered he was my boss, that this was completely inappropriate, that I wasn't even sure if I was ready to admit what I felt. But all that came out of my mouth was, "Don't stop." And then he smiled that small, vulnerable smile that had nothing to do with the authoritarian man who commanded meetings. And he rested his forehead against mine. Just that. Just closeness. We stayed like that, breathing the same air, sharing the same space, and it was the most intimate thing I had ever experienced without even kissing. "The nights you've given me," he whispered, "are the only parts of the day when I feel alive." And I realized, with a clarity that scared me, that I felt the same. When I left there that night, something had changed irreversibly. They weren't just contractual nights anymore. They were nights where I was discovering parts of myself I had hidden so deep I didn't even remember they existed. He didn't own my nights because of a contract. He owned them because I had chosen to give them to him. And that realization was both liberating and terrifying. Because if I was giving my nights voluntarily, what else was I willing to give? My certainty about who I was. My carefully built defenses. The safe version of myself I had presented to the world for years. I should have stopped there. I should have put some distance between us. Regained my rationality, remembered all the reasons why this was a terrible idea. But then came the fifth night. And the fifth night changed absolutely everything. The fifth night arrived in a way I never imagined. It wasn't at the office. It wasn't in that professional environment we had created as a shield. This time, he asked me to come to his house. "Just to talk," he said. "No pressure. Nothing you don't want." I should have refused. I should have said this was crossing all the boundaries we had set at the beginning. But I didn't refuse. Because the truth is, I wanted it too. I wanted to understand what was happening between us. I wanted to understand what was happening to me. His place was different from what I expected. It had none of that cold corporate sterility of the office. It was warm, lived in. There were books on the shelves, real plants in the windows, a kitchen that clearly got used. It was the home of someone who actually lived, not just someone who existed between board meetings and contracts. He poured me some wine. Nothing fancy. We sat on the porch, that small covered space you find in older houses, where you can still hear the street but feel tucked away at the same time. He looked different, without the immaculate dress shirt, without the boss posture. He was in a t-shirt, barefoot, with that exhausted look of someone carrying too much weight. "Do you regret signing the contract?" he asked suddenly, without looking me in the eyes. The question caught me off guard. Regret it? How could I regret something that was transforming me in a way I didn't even know was possible? "No," I replied. And it was true. "Do you?" He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I regret creating it. Because now I don't know if what I feel for you is real, or just a consequence of putting you in this situation." That was the moment I understood. He was confused too. He was questioning everything too. It wasn't just me feeling that tightness in my chest every time we were alone. It wasn't just me staying up all night thinking about the meaning of every gesture, every word. "The contract didn't force me to feel anything," I said, feeling my voice tremble. "I chose to feel. I choose to feel. Every night I come here that I stay with you. It's not because a piece of paper says I have to. It's because I want to." He finally looked at me, and in that look was everything fear, desire, vulnerability, hope. "Do you know what you're saying?" "I do. For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm saying." And then he moved closer. Slowly, as if giving me all the time in the world to pull back, to change my mind. But I didn't. I moved closer too. And when our lips met, it was like all that tension from the last few weeks finally found somewhere to go. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were testing if it was real, if this could actually happen. But when I felt his hand on the back of my neck, drawing us closer, something inside me broke open. All those walls I'd built for years, right and wrong, what people will say, who I'm supposed to be. All of it just dissolved. I was there, completely present, kissing my boss on his porch, and for the first time in a long time I felt whole. When we pulled apart, neither of us said anything for a few seconds. We just stayed there, breathing, trying to process what had just happened. I could feel my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. I could taste the wine on his lips still mixed with mine. I could feel the warmth of his hand still on my face. "I didn't plan this," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "I swear that's not why I created the contract." "I know," I answered. And I really did. Because what was happening between us was bigger than any plan, bigger than any corporate strategy. It was real. Terrifyingly real. We stayed on the balcony for hours, talking, laughing, kissing every now and then as if we were discovering something precious we were afraid to lose. He told me things I knew he'd never told anyone, about how lonely it was, even in a crowded room, about how he built that whole tough boss persona because it was easier than admitting he was scared too, that he also didn't always know the answer. And I told him. I told him about all the times I forced myself to be what people thought I should be. About all the relationships I had just because it seemed like the next logical step, not because I actually wanted them. About how I spent years of my life on autopilot, doing what was expected, being who was expected. "Have you ever questioned your sexuality?" he asked, with that raw sincerity that only comes out when all the masks have fallen away. The question was direct, but I didn't feel afraid. "Now I'm questioning everything," I replied, "especially after meeting you, after these nights." He held my hand. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was something simple, almost automatic. But in that touch, there was a promise that, no matter how confusing everything was, we weren't alone in this mess. "I fell in love once," he confessed, looking out at the city. "It was intense and chaotic, and when it fell apart, I promised myself I'd never let anyone get to me like that again, that I'd keep everything locked down, that I'd always be in charge, never the one who needed anyone." He paused, took a deep breath, and turned to me. "But with you, I can't keep it locked down. And the thing that terrifies me most, I don't want to." In that moment, the contract didn't matter. The office didn't matter. People's opinions, social rules, everything that should have made me afraid, none of it mattered. What mattered was that there, on that balcony, I was being more myself than I had been in my entire life. We went back inside when it got cold. He offered me the guest bed, but we both knew that was just a formality. We ended up on the couch, wrapped up in each other, watching some movie neither of us was paying attention to, just feeling each other's presence, just existing in the same space without needing excuses. I rested my head on his chest and heard his heart beating, a steady, comforting rhythm. And I thought, this is it. This is how it has to be. No contracts dictating when we can meet. No papers saying who has to be available when. Just this. Just us. For a few hours, I allowed myself to believe it could be like this forever. But then, it was almost 4 a.m. when his phone rang. We jumped. He looked at the screen and tensed up instantly. It was the office. Some emergency. Something that needed his immediate attention. And just like that, in a second, the real world returned. That world where he was the boss and I was the employee. That world where what we had done during the night had consequences. That world where contracts, hierarchies, and appearances mattered. He answered, assumed his professional posture, solved the problem. When he hung up, we looked at each other, and I saw in him the same fear I was feeling. The fear of what came next. The fear that maybe that night was just an isolated moment, a fantasy that reality would destroy as soon as the sun came up. "We need to talk about this," he said. but it didn't sound like a promise. It sounded like a goodbye. I just nodded, because I knew he was right. We needed to talk. We needed to decide if this was real or if it was just a strange consequence of a contract that should never have existed. We needed to find out if what we felt was strong enough to survive outside that bubble we had created on his nights. I left shortly after. Not because he asked me to, but because I needed to sit with everything alone. I needed to figure out who I was after that night. I needed to know if I could be this person, this version of me who kissed his boss, who opened up completely, who admitted desires I'd hidden for so long when the sun came up and real life came rushing back. Driving home, the taste of him still on my lips, one question kept circling. Could we turn this into something that would last beyond these nights? Or would morning always bring back a reality we couldn't reconcile with what we were feeling? But we knew the morning would bring questions neither of us had the answer to. And I didn't know if I was ready to face those questions. I didn't know if he was. I didn't know if what we had was strong enough to survive the judgment of the outside world. Was it real? Or was it just the strange power that contract had over us, making us confuse obligation with desire, forced proximity with true connection? I wasn't sure. And that uncertainty hurt more than any rejection ever could. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. My whole body was tight, like every muscle knew I'd crossed a line. Sunlight was pouring through the window, and I just stared at the ceiling, replaying what happened hours ago. The kiss, the confession, the way he held me like I was the only thing that mattered. But now, in the cold light of reality, everything seemed different, more complicated, riskier. I got to the office early, hoping to avoid him. I needed space, time to figure out what I'd do when I saw him. But his office light was already on. He was at his desk, typing, with that cold professional distance I recognized too well. I froze in the hallway. He looked up. Our eyes met for a second, maybe less than that. And then he turned back to the screen as if I were just any employee walking by. As if the night before hadn't happened. My stomach dropped. I went into my office and closed the door, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my neck. It had been a mistake, obviously. He was regretting it, seeing the insanity of what we'd done. I was just an employee. The contract was almost over. He wanted me gone, and for me to never speak of it again. The morning dragged on. Every minute felt like an hour. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept going back to that cold exchange of glances in the hallway. Had I imagined the connection? Was it just the alcohol, the moment, the forced proximity of the contract? At 10:30, I got an email from him. Meeting at 11 a.m., conference room. Subject, contract review. My blood ran cold. Contract review. What did that mean? Was he going to fire me? Was he going to pretend nothing happened and expect me to do the same? Or worse, was he going to confront me about crossing professional boundaries? I walked into the conference room exactly at 11. He was already there, sitting at the head of the table, with a folder open in front of him. When the door closed behind me, he didn't even look up. "Sit," he said, his voice completely neutral. I sat at the other end of the table, the safest distance I could keep. My hands were sweating. He finally looked at me, but there was no warmth there. Nothing of what I had seen the night before. It was like he was looking at a stranger. "Your contract expires in a week," he began, straight to the point. "We need to decide whether to renew or terminate." Every word was a stab. Terminate. He wanted to end it. "I understand if you want to terminate it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, professional. "I know things got complicated." He snapped the folder shut. "Complicated," he repeated, as if the word were an insult. "Is that how you describe it?" I didn't know what to answer. My throat felt too tight. Look, he continued, running his hand over his face. What happened last night shouldn't have. It was a mistake on my part. A mistake. The words landed like a blow. I'd given him everything, torn down every wall, and for him, it was just a lapse in judgment. I get it, I said, standing up from the chair. I wasn't going to stay there and hear anymore. So, let's end the contract. I'll finish the week, and we'll move on. Wait, he said, but I was already at the door. I left the conference room, trying not to run. I wasn't going to let him see me broken. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. The rest of the day was torture. Every time I had to pass near his office, my whole body braced for another blow. But he didn't leave his office once. Not for lunch, not for anything. That night at home, I stared at the contract still in my drawer. That goddamn contract that started everything. Ownership of Knights. What a joke. He never owned me. I gave myself freely, like an idiot. 2 days passed like that. Total distance. Formal emails. Zero contact beyond what was strictly necessary. I convinced myself I had made the right choice in offering to end it all. It was better this way. Professional. Clean. No more mess. But then, on Thursday afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was getting coffee when I heard voices in the hallway. 2 colleagues. I didn't mean to listen, but then I heard my name. Did you see how cold the boss has been acting toward him? Yeah. Guess he figured out giving special attention to a new hire looks bad. Or the kid was getting ideas. You ever notice how he looks at him? Pause, then a nasty laugh. You think he... Who knows? But I'd create distance too if I were in his position. Can you imagine the scandal? My face went hot. My pulse was roaring in my ears, surely audible through the wall. I waited till they left before coming out, coffee abandoned. So that was it. He was creating distance to protect his own reputation. Not because he regretted his feelings, but because he was afraid of what people would think, of what they would say. Part of me understood, truly understood, but another part, the part that had opened up completely to him, that had trusted him with truths I had never told anyone, that part felt betrayed. That night, I worked late. Not because he asked the contract wasn't even technically in effect anymore, but because I didn't want to go home and be alone with my thoughts. It was almost 9 when I heard my office door open. I looked up and he was there, standing in the doorway. The office was empty, just the 2 of us in the entire building. He looked exhausted, with deep dark circles under his eyes and his tie loosened. "You're still here," he said. But it wasn't a question. It was almost an accusation. "Finishing up some reports," I lied. "I'm leaving soon." He walked in and closed the door behind him. My whole body went on alert. "We need to talk," he said. "I think you made everything pretty clear in the meeting," I replied, turning back to my computer screen. I wasn't going to look at him. I wasn't going to let him see how much he'd hurt me. "I didn't say half of what I needed to," he retorted, his voice lower now. "You left before I could explain." "Error in judgment. That's what you said. Doesn't need much explanation." Silence. Then he approached my desk. I could feel his presence, that familiar warmth my body recognized instinctively. "I called it an error in judgment because I was scared," he said, and there was something in his voice, something broken, that finally made me look up. Scared of what it means, of what people will think, of what this will do to my career, to yours, to everything. "So you chose to pretend it didn't happen." "I chose to protect you," he said, his voice firm now. "Have you heard what people are saying?" "I have. I've heard every nasty comment, every insinuation. If I keep treating you differently, if anyone suspects what's really going on between us, your reputation will be destroyed. Mine, I can handle. Yours? I can't. I stood up, finally facing him for real. You don't get to decide that for me, I said. If I'm willing to take that risk, that's my choice. But what if I can't watch you destroyed because of me? He asked, and his voice cracked. What if losing you completely is better than watching you get burned? I had no answer for that. We stood there, a few feet apart, and it was like there was a chasm between us. A chasm made of fear, of social expectations, of professional consequences, of all the logical reasons why this never should have started. The contract ends in 4 days, he said finally. After that, you're free. Free to leave. Free to start over somewhere else where no one will judge you. Free of me. And what if I don't want to be free of you? The question slipped out before I could think it through. But the moment I said it, I knew it was true. The only truth I had. He closed his eyes, as if my words had caused physical pain. Then you need to decide, he said, opening his eyes again. You need to decide if you're willing to pay the price that's coming. Because I won't lie to you. There will be a price. There always is. And you, I asked, are you willing to pay? He didn't answer. He just looked at me with those dark eyes, full of conflict and desire and fear, and then turned and walked out of the room. I stood there alone, in the empty room, with his question echoing in my head. You need to decide. I grabbed my phone and checked the date. 4 days. I had 4 days to decide if I was going to renew the contract, and with it, renew everything that had started between us. Or if I was going to take my things and leave him behind, go back to the safe, lonely life I had before. 4 days to decide between safety and truth, between conformity and authenticity, between who I always pretended to be and who I really was when I was with him. I shut down the computer and gathered my things. Passing by his office, I saw the light was still on. He was inside, probably just as lost as I was, trying to decide the same thing. Leaving the building, the night was cold and clear. I looked up at the stars and thought about all the times he had asked me to stay just one more night. All the conversations, all the confessions, all the moments of vulnerability we had shared. And I thought about his expression when he kissed me, the way he held me, as if I were something precious he was afraid to break. This wasn't just about a contract. It never had been. It was about having the courage to choose who I really was, even knowing the cost. It was about staring down fear and deciding if the person on the other side was worth risking everything for. I had 4 days to find that courage. 4 days to decide if I was ready to tear up all the contracts, the written and the unwritten ones that had defined my life until now. 4 days to choose between playing it safe and living for real. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every word we'd exchanged, every look, every silence loaded with meaning. And for the first time since that terrible morning, I felt something other than pain and confusion. I felt hope. Because he hadn't said he didn't want me. He said he was trying to protect me, that he was afraid of the consequences, but not of us. And if he was afraid, it meant he had something to lose. It meant that I mattered. The question now was simple, and yet impossible. Was I willing to be brave enough for both of us? I spent the entire week staring at that contract. The same clauses I had read dozens of times seemed different now. The contractor grants the hiring party exclusive rights over their evenings, as defined in the conditions below. Exclusive rights. I had signed that thinking it was about work, about overtime, about urgent deadlines, about my career. But looking at those words now, I realized something that made me stop breathing for a second. The contract had never forced me to do anything. I was the one who had given my nights, freely, completely. Not because a document forced me to, but because I wanted to be near him, And that realization scared me more than any contractual clause ever could. It was Thursday when I finally worked up the courage. The week left before the contract expired was passing too quickly, and I knew that if I did nothing, if I said nothing, I would lose the only chance to turn this into something real, or to let it die for good. I knocked on his office door at 6:30 p.m. when I knew the building was empty. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it everywhere: neck, wrists, throat. "Come in," he said, still looking at his paperwork. I walked in and closed the door. The soft click made him look up, and I saw that same tension written all over his face that I was feeling. That professional armor he'd worn all week was still there, but I could see straight through it now. I could feel the effort it was taking. "I need to speak with you," I said before I lost my nerve. "About the contract." He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time in days, he really looked at me. Not the way a boss looks at an employee, but the way he used to look before everything fell apart. "It expires in a week," he said, his voice unreadable. "I thought you were just going to let it end." "I was," I said, moving closer to the desk. "But I realized if I do that, I'm just running away again. And I'm done running." He was quiet, just listening. That silence I'd come to understand, not rejection. Just room, space for me to talk. "When I signed this contract," I said carefully, "I told myself it was about my career, about being strategic. But the truth is, I already wanted an excuse to be around you. I just didn't admit it yet." Something shifted in his face. The tension didn't leave, but it changed. Became more human. "You think I didn't know that?" he asked softly. "Why do you think I wrote it? I didn't need someone at night. I could have hired anyone for what I'm paying you." My chest tightened. "So why?" "Because I wanted an excuse," he said, standing up. "Every time you walked out at the end of the day, I kept wondering what it would take to ask you to stay. But I couldn't. Not as your boss. Not without some reason on paper." He moved around the desk, stopping close enough that I could feel that pull between us, but far enough to stay in control. "So I created it," he continued. "Convinced myself it was practical, professional, good for the company." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really, I was just trying to get time with you without admitting what I actually wanted." The silence that followed was heavy, full of everything we'd left unsaid for months. Everything hidden under professionalism and contracts and safe distance. "And what did you want?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He looked me in the eyes, and for the first time there was nothing hidden there. No professional mask, no careful control. "You," he said. "I wanted you. Badly. Messily. The kind of way that scared the hell out of me. So I tried to turn it into something I could control. Make it safe, manageable, contractual." I stepped closer, narrowing the space between us. "But it didn't work," I said. "No," he agreed quietly. "Because you can't contract emotion. You can't write something that forces someone to feel what we feel. It took me way too long to realize that what's happening between us isn't something you can manage or contain." I reached for his hand. It was the first time I'd touched him since that night. Since the kiss. Since everything shifted. His fingers wrapped around mine right away. Like they'd been waiting. "So, what do we do?" I asked. "How do we turn this into something real without destroying everything in the process?" He squeezed my hand, and I saw in his eyes the same courage I was trying to find. "We stop pretending it's just professional," he said. "Stop hiding. Stop trying to control something that can't be controlled." "And what about work? What about the people here?" "I've already thought about that," he replied. I thought about all the complications, all the rules we're breaking, everything that could go wrong. And I realized that none of that matters if I lose you while trying to keep up appearances. He let go to cradle my face in both hands, making me meet his eyes. I built my whole life on an image, he said. The perfect boss, the flawless professional, always in control. Then you came and tore it all down, made me see I was living a false version of me. And the crazy part? The amazing part? I don't want to rebuild that lie. I don't want to go back to being that guy. Tears burned my eyes. I don't either, I whispered. I can't go back to who I was before you. Before I realized everything I believed about myself was wrong. So we don't, he said, pulling me close. We go forward, together, even if it's hard, even with people talking, even if we have to burn it all down and start over. I kissed him. Not like that first time. Desperate, uncertain, terrified. But deliberately. A choice. Knowing exactly that this was going to change everything, and choosing it anyway. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead on mine, breathing deeply. I'll talk to HR tomorrow, he said. I'll explain the situation, see what the options are. Maybe I'll need to transfer, or you will. Or we'll find a way, I completed. Because I'm not giving up on you because of corporate bureaucracy. He smiled, and it was a genuine smile this time. Not that professional, measured smile he used in the office, but something authentic, vulnerable, real. Do you know what's most ironic? He asked. I created that contract thinking I was maintaining control, but in the end, it was what set me free. It gave me permission to feel what I already felt, to admit what I was denying. I picked up the contract from his desk, those pages that had governed so many of our nights. Maybe we don't tear it up, I said. Maybe we just rewrite it. He grabbed a pen and, slowly and deliberately, crossed out the title. Where it said, Night Work Contract, he wrote something new, something ours. Mutual Choice Agreement. Below that, his handwriting steady. Where both parties freely choose to give their nights, their fears, their truths, and build something real together. I took the pen from his hand and signed my name directly below the new clause. Not because a document obliged me, but because I wanted to. Because for the first time in my life, I was choosing to be completely honest about who I was and what I wanted. There will still be complications, I said, returning the pen. People will talk, they will judge. Let them talk, he replied, signing his own name beside mine. I'm tired of living for others' approval. Friday, he asked me to meet him in the parking lot after work. Not in his office, not somewhere private. The parking lot, where everyone could see. When I got there, he was waiting against his car. When he saw me, he didn't look away. Didn't pretend he was checking his phone, or had some other reason to be there. He just smiled and reached for my hand. I looked around. 5 people from the office, at least. People we knew. People who worked with us. People who would definitely notice. I took his hand. I watched people's eyes go wide, saw the nudges, the whispers, and I didn't care. Not with his hand in mine. Want to get dinner? He asked, making sure everyone nearby heard. Absolutely, I said, and let him lace our fingers together. We walked to his car like that. Connected, visible, deliberate. Every step a statement. Every moment a choice. At the restaurant, he asked for a table for 2. Not tucked away in a corner, near the windows, where streetlights spilled in, where anyone passing could see. You sure about this? I asked, still stunned at how fast things were moving. He took my hand across the table, right there in front of everyone. I'm sure about you, he said. That's all I need. That night, for the first time, we didn't have a contract governing our time together. No clauses, no work obligations, no cover story. Just choice. And when, weeks later, someone from the office finally asked directly about us, he didn't hesitate. Yes, he said. Simple as that. We're together. No explanations, no apologies, no trying to make it sound less than what it was. Just the truth. And here's what surprised us. People didn't care as much as we'd thought. Sure, some talked, some judged, but others supported us. Said they'd figured it out already. Said they thought it was beautiful, two people brave enough to be honest with each other. A colleague named Renata caught me in the hallway one day. "Can I ask you something?" she said, awkward. I tensed. "Sure. How'd you know? That this was what you wanted?" And I got it. She wasn't judging. She was asking because something in her own life needed questioning. I stopped fighting what I felt, I said honestly. Stopped trying to squeeze my life into versions of what I thought it should be. Once I stopped doing that, it got clear real fast. She looked at me like she was working something out. That must have been terrifying. It was, I admitted. But you know what's worse? Pretending for your whole life. Never knowing who you actually are because you're too busy being what everyone else needs. Something clicked in her expression, like I'd just opened a door she'd been staring at. That night, I told him about the conversation and he held me close. "Do you know what you're doing?" he asked. "What?" "Giving people permission to be honest. Just by living openly, you're showing them it can be done." I'd never seen it that way. I thought I was just managing my own transformation. But maybe he was right. Maybe by dropping the act, by choosing authenticity over approval, I was giving other people permission too. "You did it first," I said. "That ridiculous contract, you couldn't just say what you wanted, but it freed me too." He laughed. "So my inability to be straightforward was actually helpful? It let us both find who we really were. Sometimes you need an excuse before you find the courage. And now?" he asked. "Now that we have no more excuses." I looked at him, this man who'd completely rewritten how I understood myself, and smiled. "Now we just live. No contracts, no masks, no fake versions." He kissed me then, slow and deliberate, and I felt everything we'd built pour into it. Every moment of vulnerability, every choice to be honest. "There'll still be hard days," he said against my mouth. "People who don't get it, complicated situations." "I know," I said. "But I know who I am now, and I know you're here. That's enough to handle anything." He pulled back, but kept his hands on my face, like he was trying to memorize it. "Remember what I told you that first night?" he asked. "At the beginning?" I searched my memory. So much had happened. Moments that seemed small then but held so much weight now. "I said your eyes were honest," he continued. "Even when you were trying to hide, your eyes showed everything. And I loved that honesty in you before you were ready for it." Tears started again, but I didn't look away. "And now?" I asked. "What do you see?" He smiled, wiping the tears with his thumbs. "Now I see someone who stopped running. Someone who chose to be brave. Someone building a real life instead of a performance. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed." In that moment, I understood. The contract was never about controlling time. It was about permission. To feel. To want. To be. We didn't need permission anymore. We had choice now, and we chose each other, every single day, deliberately, completely. No contract required. The person I thought I was is gone. And honestly, I'm grateful every single day. When we signed that new contract, not the paperwork, but the real one we wrote with glances and promises at sunrise, we knew we were choosing something HR would never endorse. But for the first time, I wasn't signing out of obligation. I was choosing. The office was still the same. Same gray walls, same humming computers, same terrible coffee from the broken machine. But it had all changed. Because now, when he passed my desk and we made eye contact, there was no more weight pressing down on us from hiding. Just a quiet truth we both knew. We picked each other. 3 weeks later, someone finally asked. Mariana from accounting, the kind of person who notices when things shift. She pulled me aside, eyes kind but curious. You look different. Lighter. What happened? I could have lied, could have made something up about a gym or a therapist, kept the act going. But what came out was, I stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. Her eyes widened slightly, not judging, recognizing, like she carried that same weight. How is it? She asked quietly. Terrifying, I said, but real. The first time in years, I actually feel real. She smiled, squeezed my shoulder, and just said, about damn time. Then she left me there, and I realized the world wasn't nearly as cruel as I'd imagined. The harshest judgment had always come from inside me. That night, we left the office together without excuses. No invented meetings or urgent calls. Just together. He opened my car door, that small gesture he always made, but it meant something different now. Not a boss being formal, just the man I love showing me he cares. We drove to that overlook outside the city, the same place from the fifth night, the one that changed everything. The city glowed below, thousands of lives with their own secret contracts, their own hidden truths. Any regrets? He asked, breaking the silence. His voice soft in that way that only happened when we were alone. I took his hand. His fingers found mine like they always did, steady and familiar. About what? Signing your ridiculous contract? Spending nights figuring out who I am? Falling for my boss the way I never thought possible? He smiled that crooked smile I'd grown to love. Any of it? No, I said, and I felt the truth of it. I regret not signing sooner. I regret all those years pretending to be what other people wanted. I regret every time I saw myself in a mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. He held my hand tighter. You get that this changes everything? The job, family, everything. I get it, I interrupted. And I'm choosing it anyway. You showed me that contracts can be rewritten. That rules I thought were fixed aren't. They were just lies I told myself because lying was easier. We stood there in that comfortable quiet that only happens between people who truly know each other, watching the city pulse below. Then he did something I'll never forget. He pulled out the original contract, he'd kept it, and tore it up. Slowly, deliberately, letting those absurd clauses scatter like confetti in the wind. We don't need this anymore, he said. We never did. You always had the choice. I needed to give you permission to take it. And standing there, under stars that had seen countless transformations before ours, I finally got it. The contract wasn't about possession. It was permission. To feel. To want. To exist. We kissed not like that desperate, confused kiss from the fifth night. but like two people who finally understood who they were and what they wanted. No doubt, no fear, just absolute certainty that some contracts need breaking and others need rewriting with truth. In the weeks after, the office adapted. Some people weren't comfortable with it. Conversations would stop when we walked past. But something else happened too. Other people started exhaling. The always tense intern relaxed. The IT manager mentioned her wife for the first time in 5 years. Like our honesty gave them permission. Authenticity spreads. My family was harder. Not a fairy tale. My dad needed time. My mom cried, not angry, relieved, she said, because now she understood why I'd always seemed distant. "You're home," she whispered when she hugged me. My son came home. She was right. I was home. Or really, I was here for the first time, genuinely here. Looking back at that night I signed that ridiculous contract, I see exactly what was happening. I wasn't signing my nights away. I was taking my life back. Every night we spent together was time I wasn't wasting on pretense, on performing, on fitting into shapes that didn't fit. The contract didn't own me. It freed me. And this is what matters. The contracts that count aren't written on official letterhead with notarized signatures. They're the ones you make with yourself. The contract to be truthful, even when it terrifies you. The contract to pick authenticity over fitting in. The contract to rewrite rules that never made sense. Do you have old contracts crushing you? Unspoken agreements with the world about who you should be, who you should love, what you should want? I'm telling you, you can destroy them. All of them. Write new ones. With your own words, your own rules, your own truth. It's going to scare you. Really scare you. But it'll be real. And after years of being the fake version of myself, trust me, real beats everything else. Today, we still work at the same firm. He's technically still my boss, though we shifted things to avoid conflicts. We still drink terrible coffee from that broken machine. But when our hands touch reaching for cups, there's no shame anymore. Just quiet happiness at being ourselves. At night, at home our home. I sometimes look at the torn pieces of that original contract he keeps in a box. Evidence of how much has changed. And I'm grateful for that absurd document, because it was the permission I needed to finally do what I should have done years ago. Choose myself. If any of this hit you, if you see yourself in this story of broken contracts and rebuilt truth, share it with someone who needs to know that rewriting your life is possible. And if you want more stories about courage, authenticity, love that breaks stupid rules, subscribe. Because every story I share is another way of tearing up those old contracts. Not just mine. Ours. We're owed real lives. Not edited versions, not polished performances. Real. Messy. Raw. Honest. Completely ours. The person I thought I was, she doesn't exist anymore. And I'm grateful for that every day. Because who I am now, I finally understand what it means to belong to myself. No contract can give you that. Only you can choose it, so choose.